outbreak.co.nz.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Now, haere aki nei, hospo and haircuts are back for Waikato. It moves to level 2 at 11:59pm tomorrow, despite more cases. But the move's temporary. Rotorua, Taupo, Waikato, Northland, Wairarapa, Tararua, Taranaki and Auckland, the COVID club is getting less and less exclusive. The Deputy Prime Minister joins us live. Mandate Monday means some teachers and medical professionals are out of a job after refusing to take the shot. While some don't want one jab, others can't wait for a third. The government confirms boosters will be available from this month. Northland's unlikely to make the double dose target 4 months. So should the region be penned in for summer? We talk to the Whangārei Mayor.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. The Prime Minister has confirmed a vaccination booster program will begin in 2 weeks. It applies to anyone 18 years and over who had their second dose more than 6 months ago. MedSafe approved a third or booster dose last week. Jacinda Ardern says there's no need to rush to get the booster, as the science shows fully vaccinated people remain well protected, but a booster keeps the immune system at the top of its game.
Lifelong protection from vaccines is not always possible, and we see that in the likes of tetanus boosters. The science has shown us that providing a booster 6 months after the primary course essentially tops up immunity levels back up to the mid-90% mark, reducing the risk of severe disease and therefore the burden on our hospitals.
Booster doses are not required for getting a vaccine certificate at this stage. The Waikato region will move to Alert Level 2 at midnight tomorrow after 6 weeks at Alert Level 3. The Mayor of Hamilton, Paula Southgate, says the move is good news for struggling businesses and will also benefit young children. She says people should still keep their masks on, maintain social distancing and scan wherever they go. Ms Southgate says people should be thankful for the freedom and also be mindful it could be temporary.
There's a lot of common sense things that can prevail at this time, just to keep those numbers low, because if they start to climb again, the government may well come in and take this newfound freedom from us.
Paula Southgate also urges people who haven't got vaccinated to get a dose. A bar caught up in the COVID-19 outbreak in Taupo will insist on people being fully vaccinated when it reopens. Karaoke bar D-Bar is a location of interest along with 8 other places in the lakeside town. The bar was closed today while it was being sanitised. Manager Bahadur Singh says so many staff had to go into self-isolation, so he's taking significant precautions when they reopen.
And future plans is that we will let only those people who get fully jabbed, and which is a good idea to so pushing people to get jabbed as well.
There are now 5 confirmed cases in the town. Officials announced 173 new community cases nationwide today. Principals are describing today as D-Day for vaccination-resistant teachers. They hope the few who do not yet have their first injection will get it before midnight. Our education correspondent John Gerritsen reports.
School and early learning staff who do not have at least their first COVID vaccination by the end of today are banned from the classroom tomorrow. Principals say the prospect of losing staff because of vaccine misinformation is miserable. They say some have changed their minds, but others are refusing to budge. Principals in small and remote schools are worried they will not be able to replace those teachers. The Education Ministry says it's considering 4 applications from schools that want an exemption from the mandate.
The owner of the helicopter company at the centre of an ill-fated flight that killed 6 tourists and a pilot in 2015 today pushed back against claims the company wasn't up to scratch at the time of the crash. A coroner's inquest into the crash began in the Christchurch District Court today. A 2019 report highlighted a number of failings, saying the pilot, Mitch Cameron, was inexperienced and hadn't been properly trained. But James Scott, who owned the company, said that wasn't the case.
At the time, he had 360 or more hours in the squirrel with us operating, so it wasn't new. And like I said, he'd just been overseas and done a winter with flying a rescue machine and come back to us. So, I mean, this wasn't an inexperienced guy. He had 1,800 hours. And a lot of that time was in our glacier region with our conditions.
In 2019, James Scott pleaded guilty to 2 charges of failing to take all practical steps to keep his employees safe. It's 5:04. The Black Caps have little time to dwell on their T20 World Cup final defeat to Australia, with a tour of India starting on Thursday in Jaipur. New Zealand coach Gary Stead says the turnaround is the shortest in his memory. He says he'll decide on which players back up from the World Cup when the team arrives in India for their 3 T20s and the 2 tests.
We've got to make some decisions the next 24 hours around how people scrub up, whether we rest anyone in terms of just getting completely ready for test matches.
India has already confirmed several of their senior players will be rested for the T20s. Moana Pasifika will kick off the inaugural Super Rugby Pacific competition against the Brumbies at Mount Smart Stadium on February the 18th. The Blues play Fiji Drua at Eden Park on the following day. The Crusaders host the Highlanders in the opening round, while the Hurricanes and Chiefs are away to the Waratahs and Reds. All second round games will be played over 3 days of double headers in Melbourne. New Zealand Rugby's Chris Lendrum says the draw offers a level playing field for the 12 teams involved, and he's confident Trans-Tasman travel will happen.
Draw is obviously done on the basis that we can play all the way through, and we know that there's a possibility that may not happen. We've got some contingency thinking in our back pocket already, but we're certainly really hopeful that we'll be open and able to do Super Round Melbourne at the end of February.
The final is scheduled for June the 18th. That's the news.
COVID is spreading down New Zealand.
It is not unexpected that we have, over this period of time now, begun to see cases seeded in other places.
Protesters for freedom or freedom.
Freedom is stupidity masquerading as a love of freedom. Freedom means not giving a damn about anyone else's health.
And positive feedback.
Way too much cricket. Corin should run his own sports programme on another station.
Sport is not news, and it should be relegated to the back page of the last section of the newspaper like it used to be.
Sharing your views. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and Bay of Plenty partly cloudy with isolated showers mainly in the afternoons. Waikato to Kapiti, including the central high country, showers with isolated thunderstorms possible south of Whanganui today and further north tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine. Wairarapa and Wellington, also Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine. A few showers clearing tomorrow morning but returning tomorrow evening. And for Canterbury, mainly fine. However, rain about the high country with heavy and possibly thundery falls clearing tomorrow evening. For Otago and Southland, scattered rain becoming widespread in Southland tomorrow night. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland rain with heavy falls and possible squally thunderstorms. Snow lowering to 1,000 metres in the south tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with patchy evening drizzle today, mainly fine tomorrow. It's 5:07.
Nā mihi marama, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki checkpointi tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Parts of Waikato will move to alert level 2 at midnight tomorrow in what may be one of the last alert level changes before the new traffic light system comes into force. Raglan, Te Kaupata, Huntly, Narua Wahia and Hamilton City were moved to alert level 3 6 weeks ago after cases linked to Auckland's Delta outbreak were detected. Cabinet has now agreed these parts of Waikato will shift to alert level 2 from midnight tomorrow. Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, says health officials have been monitoring new cases in Waikato and now believe a move to alert level 2 is safe.
The team were clear in their advice to me late last week and also over the weekend, looking at the updates on cases, that it was appropriate for Waikato to move down a level. And they then looked at the option of either 3-3 or alert level 2 and felt that it was just more simple and consistent with the rest of the country to move directly to alert level 2, and so that was the advice we put through.
The government has also moved to introduce booster doses of the Pfizer vaccine to those aged 18 or older from the end of the month. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says anyone vaccinated 6 months ago will be eligible for a booster, but like the vaccine, some groups will be prioritised.
Our focus, though, will be encouraging those most at risk of COVID, including health workers, border workers, and our Māori and Pacific communities. We'll also be making sure older people in kaumātua, including people in residential care, have good access to booster doses when they become eligible.
There are 144,000 people who've been vaccinated for 6 months. That number will rise to 450,000 people by the end of the year. Cabinet is due to review Auckland and the wider country shifting to the new traffic light system on the 29th of November. It's 10 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai e haere ake nei. We'll talk to the Deputy Prime Minister about traffic lights, vac certificates and summer holidays. So if you've got any pressing questions, get them to us by text 2101. Schools out for unvaccinated teachers, with today the last day they've been given to get the first dose of the vaccine. From tomorrow, they're not allowed back to work on the school grounds. Principals say the prospect of losing staff over the vaccine mandate is miserable, and they hope some teachers have had an 11th hour change of mind. Here's our education correspondent, John Gerritsen.
Whangārei Intermediate's got 5 staff refusing the vaccine. Principal Hayley Reid says it's been an anxious day waiting to see if they'll change their mind.
It's probably one of the worst days of my career. I've only been a principal for 21 years and I've come across lots of other challenges, but losing staff under these conditions is really challenging for me because they are such amazing people. They're such amazing people, so I'm going to be really sad today.
Hayley Reid is not giving up hope, but says if the staff don't get the vaccination, it will be disruptive.
Potentially, I'm 5 staff members down and I need to quickly work out what I'm going to do with the impact of those staff members in their roles. And at the end of the day, it's the students also that are going to be part of this collateral damage because, they don't really understand what's going on.
Dwayne Allen from Northland College in Kaikohe says 2 of his 24 teachers don't want the vaccination and he has little hope they'll change their minds.
Having had some informal conversations with them prior to last week when a more formal process sort of started, as well as those meetings, those more formal meetings, there hasn't been a real shift in their stance or in their perspective at all.
He says the school has been 1 teacher short all year and finding 2 more next year is going to be hard. Though some schools are struggling with the vaccine mandate, other principals told RNZ all their staff are vaccinated and there have been no problems. Cherie Taylor-Patel from Flanshaw Road School in Auckland says some of her vaccination-resistant staff are wavering.
2 weeks ago, they sounded like it was really definite and there was nothing that was going to change their mind, whereas today it's been great to listen and to hear people suggest that, well, perhaps they will get vaccinated and, under certain circumstances or, for instance, with a different vaccination.
Liam Rutherford from the Educational Institute says disinformation has been the main driver for school and early learning staff refusing the vaccine.
What we've really seen through this is the challenges associated with disinformation campaigns and around how quickly misinformation can spread. And given the seriousness of COVID and the important role that the vaccine plays, I think that's hugely disappointing to see.
He says the union is expecting most people who were resisting the vaccine mandate will have changed their mind and got their shot by the end of today. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry says 4 schools have applied for an exemption from the mandate and it's considering their cases.
Ho mai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mo te hōtaka nei. How's your school going in terms of teachers being vaccinated? Do you support the vaccine mandate or not? And also let us know, kids going back to school later this week, what arrangements have your schools made? How many days will your kids get to be in the class face-to-face? Pātui mai, text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. 13 minutes past 5, kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. An unwanted visitor has made its way to Rotorua, where new COVID cases have leaked out of Auckland and into the community. The Lakes District is one of several areas with lower vaccination rates through hesitancy and misinformation. Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe spoke to locals on the town's west side.
COVID-19 is now in Rotorua, so we've come here to talk to the people. I'm standing in Fordlands in the town's west, where the double dose rate is just 51%. We want to find out what people's attitude is towards that vaccine. While news of 2 community COVID cases has well and truly spread around this community, the vaccination message is barely getting through for some.
Well, I've got a 93-year-old mum, so I've got to do it for her sake. I don't want to, I don't like it, but it's me against how many? So for mum's sake, I suppose I'll have to get it done.
No good, really. No good here. Oh, as you can see, look at them. The attitude with a lot of them. And yet there's half of them, like my family, that are double vaxxed, my grandchildren, and it's not right. I feel sorry for Jacinda, actually, and the government. Can't please everybody, eh?
We're standing outside Fordlands Foursquare during the lunchtime rush. Most here say they have made the effort.
I got vaccinated. I've got 17 great-grandchildren and my grandchildren, and I feel if I could make the effort, what's the matter with people, even though we've all got a choice?
Another woman who's stopped off to chat as she picks up supplies tells us she will get the vaccine, just not yet.
I didn't get it yet. I'm going to get it though after I have my baby. Yeah.
So why not?
I've just heard too much things, and it's just my own opinion and my own choice. Yeah. But I am going to get it next year.
Walk the streets of Fordlands, where at 68.7%, single dose rates also sit well below the national average, and you'll come across 2 broad schools of thought. Some who say the west side is committed to boosting double dose numbers.
Actually, I think most of the Fordlands have already got vaccinated and all the black power in there. And it's good because they actually trying to get everyone else to do it, even outside of Fordlands.
Then there are others who tell us this is a community that remains deeply divided over the vaccine, even with cases now on its doorstep.
Vaccinated, non-vaccinated, clashing, big time. Clashing. It's not just the races, whites against blacks, it's COVID, vaccinated against the non-vaccinated.
So what about the future? Should communities be protected by being shut off from the non-vaccinated?
Yeah, I think to keep our community safe, and Rotorua unfortunately is one of our lower vaccinated areas. So, but people, it's really hard to manage, isn't it? Border-wise, people are going to come in if they want to come in.
Hard to police. It's hard to police is a bad idea, I say. Police should do something else.
Then the big kahuna, the border around Auckland, the city that Rotorua's Delta scare is linked to.
It's spreading now anyway. So that's where the dilemma is. Should we keep it closed or should we open it up?
I'm a nurse, so it makes my job easier. But I don't know. To be honest, it's going to be in the community anyway.
So among the people here, a sense of inevitability. COVID will come to Rotorua. It will infect its communities, and it won't discriminate.
And the video from that story from our 2 Nicks will go up on our webpage. Staying in the area, there's been a testing and vaccination blitz in Taupo after 5 cases of COVID-19 were confirmed there. 200 people turned out for a dose of Pfizer today and 573 got tested, 6 times more than last Monday. Our reporter Tom Kitchen has the story from Taupo.
It's a picturesque place. The lake, the mountains and the hills. Love Taupo, the sign says as you arrive in the town centre. But reality certainly hit for Bahada Singh, the manager of D-Bar. It's a karaoke bar that's become a location of interest, along with 8 other places in the town, including a strip club, some waterfront bars, a petrol station and darts club. Today, D-Bar staff are busy cleaning.
We just sanitize the whole place because we are the location of interest. So good for our customer too, because once we sanitize the whole place, so we're ready to try it again.
Staff have been sent directly to self-isolation, which means extra numbers need to be brought in. Then the bar will reopen, but with strict precautions.
And future plans is that we will let only those people who get fully jabbed. Yeah, and which is a good idea to pushing people to get jabbed as well.
When I visited, the front doors were shut and the cleaner was hard at work.
She just came in now and then she sprayed whole premises inside the gaming room and toilets too. So it will take an hour procedure. So place is getting ready for the customers to come in and they feel safe too.
Sitting outside enjoying the sun, Simon had arrived in Taupo on holiday from Palmerston North. She decided to come up yesterday, even though she knew about the COVID threat.
We're double vaccinated and we're being careful and doing the whole signing in and wearing a mask and stuff and sort of trying to live,
She says it's simple to keep safe.
Try and be as protected. I think the double vax is really important, so and keep yourselves clean and safe and try and stay away from, we're not going to the strip club tonight, put it that way.
Sam Haupapa and his friend decided today was the day to get their first dose of the COVID vaccine.
We're just on our way there to the pharmacy now to get vaxxed because it's just come into Taupo now.
I don't know if I should be trusting the vaccine, so I'm not too sure, but I'm going to get it anyway, see what happens.
Ngāti Tūwharetoa spokesperson Te Maho Kingi says fear has increased in the last few days.
So our whānau here in Tūwharetoa are very concerned about COVID, full stop. But with the arrival of the Delta variant in our community amongst our whānau, it has heightened anxiety, it has heightened awareness, it has heightened worry.
He says they have an important task at hand.
Our role is to promote people's well-being and hauora, to encourage our whānau to protect their whakapapa by referring to and using trusted information, the likes of having kōrero with their whānau and their trusted medical advisors.
The testing stations in the town have been busy today and will keep open tonight until the high demand runs out.
Unvaccinated health workers may have worked their last day with the COVID vaccine mandate coming into effect at midnight. It says the government announces a booster scheme will start on the 29th of November for over 18s, with people able to get a third dose 6 months after their second. Sarah Dalton's the Chief Executive of the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, and she joins me now. Kia ora, Sarah.
Kia ora, Lisa.
Do you know how many of your members have refused to be vaccinated?
I don't have an exact number, but I have checked in with our industrial officers, and we would say fewer than 20 nationwide in terms of people who've reached out to us.
And do you know anything about their reasoning?
They probably reflect the usual reasons for hesitancy or refusal. They don't want Pfizer. They may have a philosophical or religious objection. They object to the mandated part of it, so the kind of usual range of things.
Yeah, so what professions are we talking about here specifically? Specialties and professions, which ones?
Given that our numbers are so small and I'm not across all of them, I'm reluctant to talk about individual specialty groups just because there are so few doctors that are taking that line. We've had way more correspondence and input from our members about when will we get our boosters.
Right, so just generally though, you represent doctors, but not just doctors, dentists as well?
We do, senior doctors and dentists. So most of our members, not all, but most of them work in DHBs in hospitals. So they are specialist senior doctors and dentists who work across a range of services. But as I say, we have more than 5,000 members and only a tiny handful are affected.
So you were saying sort of 20 or fewer. But Sarah, the thing is, those professions that you're talking about, they train for years and years to be able to do those jobs, right? And
That's right.
I mean, they can't work anywhere now in that profession in New Zealand.
That's right. It's a big call.
So what is the effect of losing them?
We don't want to lose any doctors at any time because, as you know, there's well-established data that we have supplied and from elsewhere to say that there are shortages. But because the numbers of senior doctors are so very small, most services we think will manage, will cope. It's no different from having someone away on annual leave in a sense.
Do you know of any clinics entirely that may be shut down as a consequence of this?
I'm not aware of any certainly not due to doctors. I do know of one or two that are under immense pressure already, and we're going to talk to them about what that means. But it's mostly the combined impact of medical, nursing, allied. It's not just the fact of a tiny number of senior doctors. I mean, it's regrettable, but we are absolutely behind the vaccine and the need for our frontline health workers to be vaccinated. That is absolutely the ASMS position.
You did mention other vaccinations. Is it your feeling that some of these people will come on board if they can get another vaccine?
Some people have said that's what they will do, that they'd be prepared to take a different vaccine. So I guess time will tell. We've got AstraZeneca on the horizon, so that will be interesting, but I'm not sure about the time frame for that.
Sarah, we've got a slightly scratchy cell phone, so I'm wondering if you can just move around because I really do want to be able to hear what you're saying here.
Sure, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You mentioned the fact that booster jabs are what your members are talking about. So an announcement today, how is that being met?
Oh, we're really thrilled. I did raise it with the Director General a few weeks ago, and he did say they were on the horizon, but he wouldn't give me a time frame. And so if you'd asked me to guess, I would have thought it was going to be after Christmas and the New Year. So the fact that they're going to be available from the end of November is brilliant. The efficacy of the vaccination does start to wane after 6 months, and of course, with the first jabs having gone out in February, we've got a lot of people who had their second jab in March, so it's just in time as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, how worried were your members about that?
Well, one of our members who works in an ED said he was going to go and try and get a third jab privately. That's how concerned he was. He's dealing with COVID-positive patients on a daily basis, and he said it was a necessity for him to work safely.
So is the end of November, 29th, do you think that's coming a bit late for some people?
I'm going to stick to just in time. Honestly, for most people, it will be about right. Of course, we need to be sure that the rollout will be fast and that those vaccines, those boosters will be available at work sites for people so that it's really easy for them to get those jabs.
And Sarah, what have you been told about that?
I haven't. I understand just from in passing conversation with some DHBs that and some of our members that I was with today that they had been able to get them at their work site, but we've had mixed information about how the original vaccines were rolled out. Some were able to get them at their work site. Some had to go out and look for them in the normal way in the community like the rest of us. So I really hope that work sites for all essential and healthcare workers will make accessing them at work a priority.
Good to talk to you, Sarah. That's Sarah Dalton, who's from the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, representing doctors and dentists. A second world title in 6 months has eluded the Black Caps. New Zealand have come up short at the T20 World Cup, suffering an 8-wicket defeat in this morning's Trans-Tasman final in Dubai. Despite a brilliant captain's knock from Kane Williamson, 2 equally impressive Australian innings, and the toss of the coin conspired to deny the World Test champions more silverware. Clay Wilson wraps up the action.
Maxwell looks to finish it, and he might have done it as well. 5 times 50 over men's World Cup champions, a team that can never ever be written off, and they've finally got their hands on a men's T20 World Cup trophy, and it is richly deserved.
Out-hit and outplayed. There's no denying the Black Caps came off second best in this morning's Trans-Tasman T20 title decider. But coach Gary Stead says that doesn't mean it isn't tough to take.
You come into all these games and you want to win and you work hard to try and do that. But Australia were better than us tonight. They had a couple of special innings with Warner and Marsh the way they played, and we had one with Kane.
It was essentially the story of the final. Williamson's masterful 85 from just 48 balls, guiding New Zealand to 172 for 4. only for a belligerent 77 from Mitchell Marsh and 53 from David Warner to ease Australia home with 7 balls up their sleeve. Williamson says his side could have done more, but isn't taking anything away from the Australians.
The guys worked hard to get to what we thought was a competitive total, and unfortunately we weren't able to create many opportunities and get those breakthroughs, and it was a little bit frustrating, but Aussie were outstanding in their chase and very, very clinical.
They also had one notable advantage after Aaron Finch called correctly at the coin toss. The Australian captain had no hesitation choosing to chase, knowing the team who has done so at this World Cup has almost always gone on to victory. Williamson played down the role of the toss, but Finch, who won 6 tosses out of 7 during the tournament, feels it was vital.
I tried to play it down as much as I could because I thought at some point in the tournament I'm going to lose a toss and we'll have to bat first. But it did play a big part. You saw at the end there the due factor, the slow balls weren't holding in the wicket as much. I don't know how I did it. Maybe it was just fate.
The Black Caps captain is similarly philosophical about missing out in a 3rd straight limited overs final. Despite also coming up one short at the 2015 and 2019 One-Day World Cups, Williamson says this latest result isn't all bad news.
If you look at the campaign on a whole, which we do, and the type of cricket that we've been able to play, and I can say that we're very proud of our efforts throughout this period of time. You get to a final and anything can happen.
Gary Stead is of the same opinion, and with the team almost immediately on a plane to India, the New Zealand coach says there won't be much time to dwell on what could have been in the UAE.
We're going to have to move on, dust ourselves off pretty quickly and move on to that next game. But overall, as a coach, I'm happy with the way we're tracking. And yes, we didn't get over the line tonight, but only 2 teams were in the final and we were one of them.
Well, joining me now is Clay Wilson, who I think is joining me from Victoria Park, Clay, and there's a bit of cricket on in the background there. Just, safety first at checkpoint. If I see a stray ball, I'll scream 4 and you hit the dirt. But let's move on. So where do the Black Caps go now? Oh no, we've lost Clay. And there he is, and it's looking so great down there with a few people playing cricket in the background. We'll try and get him back at some point. Can we raise him again? Are we going to give it another crack now, or shall we move to the headlines and then see if we can talk to Clay a bit later? OK, we'll try and get back to Clay a little later, so let's head to the headlines. Kia ora e te iwi e haere ake nei e a checkpoint. The Deputy Prime Minister joins us live to talk traffic lights, vaccination certificates and summer. The Whangārei Mayor says Northland won't make the double jab target in time for the government's November review. So now what? And Milwaukee Zoo moves to protect its animals from the virus. Homai o whakaro. Don't forget you can get in touch via text 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines. Ko marama anō tēnei.
Thank you, Lisa. The Prime Minister says a COVID-19 vaccination booster program will help battle the virus as the 3rd shot keeps the immune system at the top of its game. MedSafe approved a booster dose last week and Cabinet agreed today to roll out the program from the end of the month. Jacinda Ardern says there's no need to rush to get the booster as the science shows fully vaccinated people remain well protected. The Mayor of Hamilton has welcomed the decision to move Waikato to Alert Level 2 at midnight tomorrow after 6 weeks at Alert Level 3. Mayor Paula Southgate says the move will help struggling businesses, but she says people still need to follow rules around wearing masks, social distancing and scanning QR codes and to get vaccinated. Vaccination mandates for the health and education sectors come into effect from tonight. The Chief Executive of the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, Sarah Dalton, told Checkpoint there may be fewer than 20 people contacting them about vaccine hesitancy and the mandates. She says reasons include not wanting the Pfizer jab or being forced to get vaccinated. Sarah Dalton says she doubts there will be any disruption to services because the numbers of people hesitant was so low. And school principals are hopeful that teachers and support staff who are hesitant to get vaccinated do so by tomorrow. Some principals blame misinformation around some of the hesitancy, and while some teachers teachers have changed their minds. Others are refusing to budge. The Education Ministry says it's considering 4 applications from schools that want a mandate exemption. Hundreds of people have been queuing up in towns across the central and lower North Island to get COVID-19 tests following news of community cases over the weekend. Health officials say the spread down the island has shaken some of the people out of their complacency around vaccinations as well. There were 173 new community cases today, all but 10 in Auckland. We'll have more news and weather at 6.
Ngā mihi marama, and the cricket gods have been conspiring against us in more ways than one, but I think we've got Clay Wilson with us now. Kia ora, Clay.
Yeah, it's a sign of the last 24 hours, huh?
Apparently so. So, tell us, Clay, where do the Black Caps go now?
Yeah, so they, like Gary said, they have to move on pretty quickly. In fact, later tonight, New Zealand time, they'll be flying out from Dubai to India, where they're scheduled to play 3 T20s and 2 Test matches. So no rest for the wicked. Just 72 hours after they've finished this World Cup final last night, they're going to be starting this first T20 against India, and then 2 Test matches to follow that. So it's really a case for the Black Caps of looking at these T20s as a chance to get back on the horse, so to speak, and then 2 Test matches, and there'll be 9 new players joining the Black Caps for that series, that Test series. They all, those 9 players left New Zealand last week, arrived in India there early last week, including Ross Taylor, Tom Latham, Henry Nicholls, wicketkeeper Tom Blundell taking over from the now retired BJ Watling as the full-time wicketkeeper, and of course with spin set to play such a prominent role there in India, Ajaz Patel and Will Somerville also part of that group which are linking up with the Black Caps for the Test matches. One notable omission, no Trent Boult. He will play the T20s, but he's not going to play these 2 Test matches, and that's been put down to biosecure bubble fatigue. Trent Boult been involved in both sections of the IPL this year, a number of New Zealand's international matches overseas, and he's opted to come home, had too much time in biosecure bubbles, already had 3 stints in MIQ. Of course, Trent Boult would be a first choice pick in any New Zealand team in any format, but it's perhaps not such a big loss given the spin dominance in India with the seam bowlers, New Zealand seam bowlers, not going to have such a big impact, you would think, as they might otherwise in other countries.
So, Clay, for those people looking forward to a summer of cricket, when will we see the Black Caps play back here?
Yeah, so those Test matches in India will finish in early December. Those players will then come home, obviously go into MIQ. They'll have a couple of weeks off, and the first match of the home summer starts on New Year's Day, the first of 2 tests against Bangladesh. So New Year's Day there in Mount Maunganui for all the summer revellers. Hopefully that match will obviously go ahead, and that'll be a great one to look forward to there in the Mount. And then from there, the Black Caps are set to head across the Tasman, 3 ODIs, the annual Chappell-Hadley series against Australia, and a T20, perhaps a chance for a little bit of payback for last night's result. And then Australia will return the favour, are going to come here to New Zealand for some matches, along with England and South Africa. So 3 of the big teams of world cricket set to be in New Zealand over those early months of next year. So it's a chance for Kiwi cricket fans, of course yourself, Lisa, pencil those dates in the calendar. A lot of great matches to look forward to in those early months of the 2022.
Sure thing, Clay, and let's hope we haven't got anybody in trouble with them having a productive work from home day behind you, practising their cricket behind you. I bet there's a few people there who are sort of, supposed to be at work. Clay, thanks for joining us. That's Clay Wilson joining us live there from Victoria Park, and as I say, there are a few people getting a cricket practice in the background. All right, time now for business. Ko taku hoa in Nāianei, ko Nona Peltier, who joins us from our Auckland newsroom. Hey Nona, building costs have continued to rise at pace with implications for existing and would-be homeowners. Now, what kind of price increases are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, the prices are rising at double the typical pace of growth. So basically, costs rose 1.6% in the 3 months to September. Now, that's compared to a typical quarterly increase of 0.8%. Now, what is that annually? It's 5.5%. You may think, well, that doesn't sound that high. But the chief property economist for CoreLogic, Kelvin Davidson, says it is, and it's going to go much higher. He says the prices are going to get worse, and eventually it's going to become, just difficult for people to be able to buy these new homes. And at that point, we may start to see a leveling off of these price increases. In the meantime, he says there's implications here, not just for new home buyers who may find themselves priced out of the market faster than they know, but for existing homeowners, because if their insurance doesn't cover those rising costs of building materials, they may find themselves underinsured. And he says it's time to check your policy and have a good look at what the value of your property is, because if you're underinsured and you have a catastrophic type of damage to your property, you may find you are going to be short of replacement.
Nona, the Reserve Bank's chief economist, is stepping down after 25 years in the job. That's a hell of a lot of forecasting and number crunching. 25 years?
Yeah.
Why are they heading off now?
Well, his name is Young Ha, so he's not exactly a household name. Maybe some people haven't heard of him, but he's been very busy behind the scenes for a number of years. He was in the job since 1997. That's 25 years. Now, one of his positions, of course, is sitting on the Monetary Policy Committee, alongside also Deputy Governor Jeff Bascan, who's leaving the job in January. So Mr. Young Ha leaves in February. Mr. Bascan leaves in January, and that means they're going to have two positions to fill on that committee. In the meantime, we don't actually know where our chief economist is heading off to. He hasn't said, but who fills the job? Well, that will be of interest for sure, and I guess we're going to have to find out before February, or there's going to be a pretty empty table there at the Monetary Policy Committee meetings.
Nona, what news do you bring of the markets?
Yeah, the local top 50 index, it rose 0.4%, and that was after Friday's fall. That's a gain of 56 points to 12,964. And the New Zealand dollar is steady at 70.5 US cents, 96 Australian and 52.5 pence.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite, Nona Peltier there with Business. The Prime Minister's hinting the whole country could move to the COVID traffic light system ahead of the 90% double dose vaccine targets being met by individual regions. On Wednesday, Te Peremia, Jacinda Ardern, will reveal when the virtual gate to Auckland will open as the city inches towards its vaccine target, and a nationwide review is due November 29th. Other parts of the country are miles off their double jab targets, including Gisborne. Single doses there are at 83%. Double doses, 70%. So where does that leave the region? Gisborne Mayor Rehet Stoltz joins me now. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Lisa.
Hey, what's the possibility of Gisborne being cut off from other regions because you've got a low vaccine rate over the summer period?
So at this stage, Lisa, we only have one focus here. We need to get our community vaccinated and get them to the 90%. So as regional leaders, all we are focused on is just making sure our community is vaccinated.
And that's a great goal, but you must realise that you can't get there by November 29th.
So at this stage, if we look at our numbers, we aim to be there at December 12th. So we have just recently launched our Tu Mai Tairawhiti, it's our time to shine campaign. So we are now pulling out all stops and taking the vaccine to our people. So you would be well aware that we are now doing our supermarkets, mobile units, neighbourhood vax events. So we've really stepped it up here in the Tairawhiti. So our aim is to get to that 90% so that we can join the rest of the country.
Right, so you're going to meet that target after the government makes its decision. So what conversations are you having with the government or government agencies about what you would like to happen on that 29 November review?
So at this stage, like I said to you before, we leave those government discussions at this stage for the Prime Minister to make those decisions. We are just focused on our regional response at this stage. So heads down here in the Tairawhiti, that's what we focused on.
You're not being consulted at all?
So at this stage, our health, it's because, it's a health response. So our health leaders will be talking to the government. But the government is asking us, how do we support you to get there? And I know they have been working very hard to help us to have a Tairawhiti approach, the Tu Mai Tairawhiti approach. So yes, there are discussions being had, but those discussions are, how do we help you to get there?
Would you be comfortable with having visitors from all other regions if you're not at that 90% double vaccination rate?
So, Lisa, at this stage, our first priority is to keep everyone safe in our region. So the ball is in our court. So what we're saying to our Tairawhiti residents, come on, it's our time to shine so we can play with the rest of Aotearoa.
So you got no backup plan?
So our backup plan is to have our population vaccinated and ready to go.
Yeah, that's your first line of defence, and I get that, and I get aiming for the target. So, let me put it another way. Let's look at a local event, Rhythm and Vines. Do you think it will go ahead regardless of vaccination rates, of whether you meet that target of 90% double-dosed or not?
So So I just want to clarify what is our call and what's government call. So at this stage, it's obviously the government and the RNV promoters that make those calls. So we stick to our knitting here and try and get our population vaccinated as quickly as possible. Those calls will be made by the government. So, and this is why I'm harping back to us trying to and focusing on how do we change our approach? What can we do? Because the ball for that is absolutely in our court.
Understand that, but we've spoken to another mayor in a district that has lower vaccination rates, and they're in conversation with government agencies about what they would like to see happen around the border, what Plan B might look like. Have you chosen not to be part of those conversations, or have you not been invited?
No, our discussions at this stage is how the government can support us to get there. So we are having active discussions. We are having regional health-led community response discussions daily on how we get there. So at this stage, the government is asking us, how do we support you to get there? So those are the active discussions, the support discussions we are having daily.
So what kind of economic contribution do summer visitors make to your district?
So tourism accounts for about 8.2% of our GDP. Millions of dollars, maybe $2 million comes just out of Auckland. So it is a big expense. It is good for our economy if everyone can come here. And people love coming here, and we want to have people here. But ultimately, we need to make sure our community is ready to receive everyone.
If you can't have open borders and free flow of people this summer, would you be expecting some kind of financial assistance or compensation from the government?
Well, that's a discussion we will have with the government if that arises. But at this stage, like I said, I'm sorry to harp back, our aim is heads down, get our community ready so we can play with the rest of New Zealand.
Thank you for joining us tonight. That's Gisborne Mayor Stoltz. It is 5:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki i ngā pita kōrero. After the news at 6, we'll have the latest political poll. A small town in the Rotorua district has also joined the list of places now housing COVID cases. Testing sites in Woodville were busy today following the discovery of 2 cases there yesterday. Manawatu reporter Jimmy Ellingham and cameraman Angus Drever have more.
A town holding its breath, bracing to find out if COVID has spread. By early afternoon today, more than 100 people had experienced a swab up their nose. News of the 2 positive cases, who are linked and isolating at home, spread quickly through Woodville on Sunday. Yesterday, more than 320 people were tested, meaning a quarter of the town's 1,600 people have taken a test. Those RNZ spoke to either had mild symptoms, wanted a test just in case, or had visited the town's location of interest, its Caltex petrol station. Gail Roberts was thinking of her family.
We've got a little granddaughter who's 6 years old who was born in the hut, and she's in hospital premature and 5 weeks premature. So I want to keep, of course, health-wise safe for our little granddaughter. So, and this is what it's all about, you know, get vaccinated, whānau.
She says the positive cases are the talk of the town.
The ones I have seen a bit scared and cautious. The others I've seen apprehensive because they haven't had their COVID shots for whatever reason, health-wise, and then they're thinking about their grandchildren as well.
Rotorua District Mayor Tracy Collis says people are worried. Woodville and the district's other towns, such as Pahiatua and Dannevirke, were all quiet today. Yesterday in particular, there was a big push to get tested, and many people have already received their negative results.
So everyone was initially quite shocked, but they knew that this day would come. There is a lot of anxiety. There are people that know that they are a contact, so we're seeing a lot of people voluntarily go forward for testing. Those numbers are still incredibly high today, and that's actually across the 3 towns. So you'll notice there's 2 locations of interest, one in Woodville and one in Pahiatua. That's because our people travel between those towns very regularly.
Mrs. Collis says many council facilities are closed today, while staff are at home waiting for test results. She felt for the district's businesses, some of which have decided to run under alert level 3 precautions.
This town in Woodville is normally bustling, so it's quite sad to see in some respects, but very, very good to see that they are taking it incredibly seriously. No one wants a spread or an outbreak here.
Many people, such as Yummy Mummy's Cheesecake's manager Sarah Williams, were philosophical about the news.
It was going to happen eventually. It's no surprise, really. We get a lot of tourists through here, so it was only a matter of time.
She says people shouldn't be scared to come to Woodville, which is still open for business. Rowan Coker, from Palmerston North, stopped in the town for lunch. He wasn't aware of the positive cases.
Yeah, so it's in Woodville then, is it? Wasn't aware.
To make it better when taking a test, tilt your head back and swallow. That's the advice from Rotorua Health Group registered nurse Bronwyn Foreman. It's advice she's given to dozens of people in the past couple of days. She says many people who have been tested are either symptomatic or have been in contact with the positive cases or locations of interest.
Most of the ones we've done today are double vaxxed, so I think they're feeling quite good about it. They just want to do their bit and make sure it's not out and about in the community.
A block away, nurses at the Woodville Medicine Depot are vaccinating people as the Rotorua district pushes toward 90%. The district is lagging behind others in the Mid-Central District Health Board region. Nurse Amanda Brommel says news of positive cases appears to have shaken people from their malaise.
Because the threat's getting a little bit closer, that always makes people a little bit more, like it's more real. So they are coming in for that. We were supposed to be here next week, but we brought it forward just to show that we're supporting the community here.
Brommel says some people coming in for a shot are under pressure from their friends and family to do so. It's a waiting game now for Woodville and the rest of the Rotorua region as testing results from the past few days return.
Waikato will drop to alert level 2 at midnight tomorrow, despite new cases popping up in the region. And the government's announced the booster dose will be available from the end of the month for those who've had their second dose more than 6 months ago. Joining us now is Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson. Kia ora, Minister.
Kia ora, Lisa.
So Waikato moves to level 2, meaning restaurants, hospo, hairdressers are back on, but Auckland, that has a much higher vaccination rate, well, they don't get those privileges. So how is that consistent?
Yeah, so we've got two quite different outbreaks here. The outbreak in Auckland is still relatively uncontained in the sense that we're getting a large number of cases that we don't link immediately, and it takes significant time with contact tracing and so on to try to build those links. In the Waikato, we have a much smaller outbreak where it is largely contained to people that we expect to get the virus, they're close contacts of others. And so they are outbreaks at very different stages and in very different places.
Let's talk about Auckland on Wednesday, right? Because it's a date a lot of people will have all eyes to. What exactly are you going to tell Aucklanders on that date? Can you run us through it?
Yeah, look, obviously I won't say exactly because that's what's going to happen on Wednesday. But
no, the decisions, but in principle, what will we learn?
Yeah. As we signalled last week, what we want to be able to do is give people certainty about when people in Auckland are going to be able to move. We've said we want to do that in time for Christmas, and we want to also give people certainty about the way that will work. And, you know, I've traversed with you a couple of times, Lisa, as of other ministers, the various ideas and options that have been worked through. We want to make this as simple as possible, but also keep people as safe as we possibly can as vaccination rates rise right around the country.
So we'll get an exact date and the means by which we can move around. Will we be told where we can go?
We'll give as much information as we possibly can. And look, you know, we continue to want to facilitate people to go everywhere. There's no question about that. What we've been working through...
But is that realistic, Minister?
But what we've been working through is the way in which we ensure that we keep people safe. And clearly, people being vaccinated is very important as part of that. We want to make sure that as we bring the Auckland boundary down, the rest of the country who are at different rates of vaccination can feel safe. But we equally want to do that in a way that's as easy and simple to follow as possible. So that's what will be announced on Wednesday.
So the destinations we're allowed to go to, will we learn that on the 29th of November rather than on Wednesday, if indeed there are any restrictions?
I was going to say, let's just wait till Wednesday for that. But I don't think the framing of how you're talking about being allowed to go somewhere, the things that we've been working our way through as to how to make sure that we do what we can to keep people safe right around New Zealand. We have vaccination certificates. We have a testing regime. Just take a look at the way Air New Zealand has described what they're going to do. You know, you either need to have a vaccine certificate or you need a test. That's a good example of a way to manage safety. But we've been looking at regions where we obviously have very different rates of vaccination that are nearby to Auckland. So we've worked our way through that, and we'll have a lot more to say about it on Wednesday.
OK, we're getting some questions, and this is from a listener. Can we as Aucklanders be confident in planning Christmas holidays in Northland? Can they be confident they'll be allowed to go to Northland? I was going to say that we're going to be able to give all of those announcements on Wednesday, but we do want to be able to maximise people's travel. And if anyone wants to go and travel around New Zealand, the piece of advice I'd give to them is please be vaccinated. Regardless of what rules the government might put in place, we need people to be vaccinated to limit the spread of COVID. How much time do you reckon is fair to allow people to plan and actually execute their Christmas exodus?
Look, that's why we're making announcements on Wednesdays to give people time.
Ballpark, is 10 days fair? Is 3 weeks fair? Is a month fair? Given it's a high demand time of the year, Minister. What do you reckon's fair?
We're getting onto it. Absolutely, it's fair because we're getting onto it as quickly as we can, and we'll be making announcements on Wednesday.
Will the border be open both ways for Auckland? So when we talk about Aucklanders travelling out, another question is, in principle, will non-Aucklanders be able to enter Auckland for Christmas? That's from a sun-bereft Wellingtonian. Can you give them an assurance they'll be allowed in?
That assurance was given by the Prime Minister last week, so yes.
OK. So I'm wondering, Auckland, right, it's very close to hitting 90% double vax, and then we move to the traffic light system, right? Is it workable to have Auckland at a traffic light system and the rest of the country still sitting on an alert system? Can you make that work, or is that inconceivable, really?
Oh, look, I'm sure it can be made to work, but we've always wanted the traffic light system to operate as fully as it possibly can. And as you would have heard the Prime Minister and Dr Bloomfield say today, there's a certain attraction to the traffic light system because, in some ways, in terms of level 2 as it is today versus the traffic light system, there is more assurance in public's health safety provided by the traffic light system because of the use of vaccine certificates for venues like hospitality. So, yep, we want to get that traffic light system going as soon as we can. The Ministry of Health certainly want us to do that, and so we'll be working towards that.
So why not move us all on there when Auckland gets to 90% double dosed? Is the problem that you don't have a vaccine certificate system ready to go?
No, the vaccine certificate system is by and large ready, and there'll be able to be more announcements about that this week. We continue to want to lift the rates of vaccination right around New Zealand, but we'll be making more announcements about that soon, Lisa.
By and large ready, why not ready now? Because on the COVID website, it says that it will be available from mid-November. It's mid-November now, so...
Yep, and it's going to be available very soon. There's two parts to...
This week, Minister?
There's two parts to the vaccine certificate regime, and the first part of those is the certificate itself. The other part of it is the validation of those certificates by the businesses that will, and others who will use them. We've got to make sure all of that is ready to go, but we are very, very close in the regards of the vaccine certificate regime.
What's holding it up?
Well, like anything, we've just got to make sure that all of the technology works. The worst thing would be, Lisa, wouldn't it, to set something off like this, and then you'll run a whole lot of stories when somebody can't get onto a website or can't make a QR code work. So at every stage, we make sure that the technology is working well, and for it to be fully operational, it needs the validation end of it as well as the certificate.
Will it work for people who've had their vaccinations overseas?
And so that's been brought into the system. It's taking a little bit longer just for obvious reasons of being able, again, to validate offshore vaccinations and some of the detail around how you would do that, but that's been actively worked on, and I'm sure the Ministry of Health will announce as soon as possible the way in which overseas vaccinations will be included inside the system, but they will be. It's just taking a little bit of time to get there.
Could you launch it without that?
Well, I think we could probably start it, but obviously that'll make life a little bit harder for those people, and clearly we want to bring them in as soon as possible.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson. To the US now, where a Milwaukee zoo is preparing its own vaccine rollout after a couple of COVID scares. Staff have decided to start with river otters, whom they deem most at risk. And as CNN's Tom Jurian reports, from tomorrow they'll receive jabs similar to the Pfizer vaccine.
The risk to animals is very similar to people.
Things have been different at the Milwaukee County Zoo since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Not only did the animals not see any visitors for a while, some areas have been deemed biosecure to keep the animals from breathing potentially infected air from handlers and visitors.
We have tested 2 animals that we thought might have it that were showing respiratory signs, but so far we've been lucky.
While they've escaped any positive cases here, across the country there have been reports of zoo animals dying of COVID complications, most likely transferred by handlers. An outbreak, says senior zoo veterinarian Dr. Pamela Govett, could be devastating.
If we had several animals at one time get sick, it would be very hard and difficult to triage them all at once.
So now animals at the zoo will be receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. Donated by animal health company Zoetis, the vaccine is very similar to the Pfizer shots humans take.
They will be getting 2 doses 3 weeks apart, and it's a 1 ml dose just like us.
One of the first animals here at the zoo to get the COVID-19 vaccine will be these North American river otters, like this guy right here, because their class of animal has been designated as one that's particularly vulnerable to the virus.
We're going to give a couple to the river otters, a couple to the primates, a couple to the cat, and just kind of mark that off daily. And then again, we have to repeat that in 3 weeks.
Also at the top of the vaccination list, primates. The zoo has a rather large population of bonobos, themselves no stranger to vaccines.
They get influenza vaccines every year because they're susceptible to respiratory diseases.
Again, like humans, how the animals react to COVID and the vaccine depend on their age and immune response. But zoos that have already vaccinated animals only report some lethargic animals after the shots.
And feedback on the vaccine mandate kicking in today. This dental practice says we've lost 3 staff today, as have several other private practices.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, I'm Marama Tipole. Booster doses of the Pfizer vaccine will be available to people aged 18 years or older from the end of this month. Cabinet has today approved the rollout following MedSafe approval and further advice from the Vaccine Technical Advisory Group. COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins says people who completed their 2-dose course more than 6 months ago can get a 3rd shot from November the 29th. The booster will be available to people whether they received their first 2 doses in New Zealand or overseas. Mr Hipkins says the Pfizer vaccine will be used regardless of which vaccine was used for earlier doses. People will not need to have had a booster dose to qualify for a vaccine certificate. Waikato will move to Alert Level 2 at midnight tomorrow after 6 weeks at Alert Level 3. Since that time, there have been 239 COVID cases in the region. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says residents have managed to contain the virus well and vaccination rates are high.
The advice that we're receiving from the public health teams on the ground is that you're predominantly still seeing linked cases coming through, that it's very different to the wider spread outbreak that we have in Auckland, and therefore confidence around making this decision.
The settings will be short-lived though, with the country still on track to move into the new traffic light system at the end of the month. The Rotorua Mayor is feeling for businesses that had only a handful of customers today after news of 2 positive COVID cases in the district. Tracy Collar says the normally bustling main streets of Woodville, Dannevirke and Pahiatua are quiet as people wait for test results. She says many businesses are operating under level 3 precautions.
This town in Woodville is normally bustling, so it's quite sad to see in some respects, but very, very good to see that they are taking it incredibly seriously. No one wants a spread or an outbreak here.
About a quarter of Woodville's 1,600 people had been tested by early afternoon today. It may be the last day of work for unvaccinated health workers as the COVID vaccine mandate comes into effect at midnight. The Association of Salaried Medical Specialists say fewer than 20 of its members have contacted it over their vaccine hesitancy or refusal. Its chief executive, Sarah Dalton, has told Checkpoint they don't want to lose any doctors, but the system will cope.
Because, as you know, there's well-established data that we have supplied and from elsewhere to say that there are shortages. But because the numbers of senior doctors are so very small, most services, we think, will manage, will cope.
Sarah Dalton says she's not aware of any clinics that are closing because of the mandate. The Director General of Health is reassuring Northlanders sewage leaks at Whangārei Hospital aren't disrupting care. The leaking soil stack runs down 6 floors in the medical wing, and the District Health Board says it will cost $2.8 million and take 2 years to fix. Dr. Ashley Bloomfield says remedial work is underway.
It's not compromising patient care. However, also there is a need for, I would say, a significant building program in Whangārei, and that's something that's being actively considered.
The Northland DHB has been in talks with the government since 2015, trying to get funding to rebuild or redevelop Whangārei Hospital. Trains and ferries look set for disruption after Kiwi rail workers voted overwhelmingly for a nationwide strike. The industrial action will affect rail operations, including rail ferries, as well as Auckland and Wellington metro systems. Dates of the disruption are not yet known. Kiwi rail workers want an 8% pay rise. The Rail and Maritime Transport Union says it will be the first full national stoppage of the rail system since 1994. The chair of a review into the Defence Force says its recommendations for change and improvement should help prevent the mistakes made after Operation Burnham. In 2020, an inquiry found officials did not plot to cover up casualties during an Afghanistan operation in 2010, but did fail to correct claims the allegations were unfounded, despite knowing it was possible. The chair of the review, Lynn Provis, says 9 recommendations on how the organisation might be improved should prevent this from happening again.
The changes made to date and those proposed by us should help prevent a reoccurrence of the events that gave rise to this report.
The Minister of Defence, Peeni Henare, has accepted all the recommendations. The gender pay gap for government employees is the smallest it's ever been, at 8.6%. When measurements began 21 years ago, men were paid 18.6% more than women. The Minister for Women, Jan Tinetti, says while the progress is great, there's more work to be done and has launched a 3-year plan to try to further reduce gender and ethnic pay gaps. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Shannon Byrne talks sport from an Australian point of view. One of us will be laughing, the other crying. Chris Tees and Emma Barnes, editors of Out Here, a remarkable anthology of queer New Zealand voices. And Guyan Espinard talks to us about his new podcast, Proof, in which he scrutinises New Zealand's relationship with alcohol, including his own. That's Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and Bay of Plenty. Partly cloudy with isolated showers mainly in the afternoons. Waikato to Kapiti, including the central high country. Showers with isolated thunderstorms possible south of Whanganui today and further north tomorrow. Fine for Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Wellington, also Nelson and Marlborough. Mainly fine, a few showers clearing for tomorrow morning, but returning tomorrow evening. And for Canterbury, mainly fine, however, rain about the high country with heavy and possibly thundery falls, clearing tomorrow evening. Otago and Southland, scattered rain becoming widespread in Southland tomorrow night. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, rain with heavy falls and possible squally thunderstorms. Snow lowering to 1,000 metres in the south tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with patchy evening drizzle today, mainly fine for tomorrow. It's 7 minutes past 6.
Kia ora rā, e hoa no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The Delta outbreak is nibbling away at Labour's popularity, but National isn't exactly benefiting from it. In the latest One News Colmar Brunton poll, Labour is at 41%, down 2 points, and National's at 28%, up 2 points. ACT are holding steady at 14%. The Green Party is on 9%, up 1 point. As for preferred Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern is at 39%, down 5 points, while Judith Collins is at 5% and David Seymour is at 11%. Chloe Swarbrick has polled at 2%. Well, joining me to discuss all of this is our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch. Craig, what do you reckon? Would Labour be pretty happy with that? Because you got 90 days in lockdown in Auckland and it seems to have only cost you 2 points, percentage points.
Sure, but it's not the right direction, is it? Labour is going down and it's going down incrementally. It's that eating away at their vote, at their support, that will be causing Labour some concern. It wasn't a great surprise. We had 2 polls floating around last week, one from Curia and the other from Talbot Mills, formerly known as UMR, which also had Labour around that 40% mark. I think we can safely say now the glory days of 2020 are well and truly over. The COVID tide is turning, and Labour will not be feeling quite so comfortable. That said, of course, they're still sitting in it pretty comfortably in terms of governing there with the Greens. They can easily take power. It's more a concern around the general mood, whether the national mood is shifting, whether Jacinda Ardern is becoming a more polarising figure. Of course, keep an eye on that preferred Prime Minister ranking. She's dropped again there. She won't be happy at all about that. A lot has been going on, of course. Like you say, Auckland has been in lockdown for many, many months. You've had the anti-mandate protest outside of Parliament. You've got an utterly exhausted Auckland, muddled communication, trouble about the traffic light system and MIQ. So there has been a lot of negative media, negative press, negative attention, I guess, on the Labour government's handling of the second big outbreak, the Delta outbreak, as it were. So Labour will be concerned about that, concerned about whether or not the national mood is shifting, whether or not the public think that the country is headed in the right direction. Make no mistake, there will be talk in the Beehive offices tonight about this.
Yeah, so the trend is not their friend. On the other hand, though, why is National not able to capitalise on this?
Well, that's the question that the National MPs will be asking themselves too, and I think it all circles back to one person, and that's Judith Collins. The question is, when is the right time for the National MPs to roll her to take over? Her days have been numbered for quite some time. It's been very clear from talking to National MPs here down at Parliament. But the question is, what number are we on? What day are we on in terms of her leadership? Do the MPs roll her before Christmas, or do they wait till early next year? What do they want people to be talking about at their Christmas gatherings, at the holiday home, or at the bach, or at the beach? These are all factors that are going to be being considered by the National Caucus, and this poll is just going to add to that conversation. They are clearly not making as many gains as they would be liking to, with Labour going down and down. The votes do not seem to be going to National, and it is probably because the party has been in, make no mistake, they've been in complete disarray for a year and a bit. They've been a shambles. They've struggled. They've been talking more about themselves than about the government. It seems that in recent months they've sort of managed to pull that back together and pull back attention. But the fact that they haven't managed to pull ahead dramatically in the vote will be probably adding to those voices in the caucus who are saying quietly and to one another, it's time for Judith Collins to go.
So, if the 2 big players aren't the winners in this poll, Craig, name me the winner in this poll.
It's David Seymour. David has become Goliath. You know, who would have thought that just 2 years ago, the one-man band, a lone island in Parliament, all on his own. Now he's in charge of a caucus of 10, and it seems to be going from strength to strength. The ACT seems to be only going in one direction, and that's up. And they seem to be going, and David Seymour as well, regularly registering in those preferred prime ministerial polls. Now, of course, he hasn't gone up today, and ACT hasn't gone up, but they've stayed steady, and that in today's poll, but they have stayed steady, and that will be right where they want to be. 14%, that is a stellar result for a party that not long ago was a one-man band. So part of the reason, of course, as always when we talk about ACT, is that he's benefiting because of National wallowing in the polls. While National are down so down so far, there are a lot of right-wing voters out there who are ripe for the picking, and David Seymour seems to be just collecting those stray votes and bringing them right over to ACT. On the other hand, David Seymour has only been able to collect those votes because he's put up a fairly capable and competent front. He's managed to keep his caucus focused or at least invisible. And ACT, they'll tell you as well that some of their internal polling has showed that they're picking up some votes from Labour. So these ACT support staying steady there at 14% will be causing some concern in both parties, both Labour and National, but more so in National. They will be very concerned about a narrative taking hold that ACT is the main opposition party, that David Seymour is the leader of the opposition. So consider that another factor that National MPs will be considering.
Good to talk to you, Craig. That's a Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch. If you're just joining us, that's the One News Colmar Brunton poll. Labour is at 41%, down 2 points. National, 28% up 2. ACT holding steady at 14%. Whangārei's Mayor concedes Tai Tokerau won't make the 90% double vax target by the time the government makes its decision on moving to the new COVID traffic light system. But Sheryl Mai won't say if the border between Auckland and her region should open up, regardless of whether Northland falls short on jabs. On Wednesday, Te Pere Mayor Jacinda Ardern will reveal when the virtual gate to the supercity will open. But the government has not ruled out restricting travel to areas with low vaccination rates and will review the nationwide situation on November 29th. Northland is in level 2. Its first dose rate is 82%, with only 72% fully vaccinated. Whangārei Mayor Sheryl Mai says she's in talks with government officials about what could happen.
We have regular discussions with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet representatives, Department of Internal Affairs. So, we're just really hooking in our input. It's being listened to and heard and influencing the decisions that Cabinet makes.
Do you want to have Aucklanders and others in Northland over the Christmas-summer break?
Well, the top priority always is the health of our Northlanders, but all New Zealanders. So if but our economy is really reliant on people coming to our region. So with safe passage, with double vaxxed people, we really would be welcoming people to come north. Many people will be wanting to come to visit their batches and holiday in our glorious region. So we love those people, but we definitely don't want them bringing COVID with them.
So, are they suggesting to you, the government agencies that are talking with you, that there could be a possibility that your district is cut off?
Look, realistically, because our vaccination rates are still low, and we have to really work hard at protecting our own people from the ravages of COVID if it came. So it may be that we need to continue to have checkpoints to ensure that people are travelling appropriately in both directions, because obviously we don't want Northlanders going to an area to be exposed with COVID and then bringing it home again. So there definitely needs to be a continued vigilance and to ensure that we're protected from this virus.
Sheryl, just to be clear, are you being given a clear indication that there will still be a border into Northland at Christmas or summer?
No, there's no clear indication at this point. We know that those decisions will be made in the future, and those decisions will be made based on the relevant information at the time. What we need to do currently in our region is get our vaccination up to that 90%, and we're a long way off that. So that's probably the most important thing that we need to do as a region, and then that gives the government some options into maybe being able to ensure that we still may need checkpoints, but that's going to slow the trip down north and south. So ideally, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need it, but if we do, and that's the decision that's made, then we will absolutely support that.
Has the government asked you for input on where the checkpoints should be?
Yes, we have had some input into the locations for checkpoints, and hopefully our recommendations will be incorporated. We still don't know at this point.
So that is input into potential future checkpoints we're talking about here.
That's if the existing checkpoints are continued, if there's a different regime between the COVID protection framework and a region that hasn't yet met the criteria to be able to go into the red, amber, green status. So it could be that we're operating at an alert level as opposed to the red, amber, green, or we may be at red and they may be at amber. The difference between the regions, and that's all contingent on the District Health Board statistics as to the vaccination rates.
Sheryl, to be realistic though, on the 29th of November when government does its review, you're not going to have reached 90% double dosed, are you, realistically?
unlikely for the second vaccination, definitely not. I would say we'll be struggling even through to mid-December. So that's a real possibility that we have to face, which is why we need to encourage everybody to get their first and second vaccination.
Would you be comfortable with Northland opening up if you are not at 90% double dosed?
I think the risk then is that we could, our health system may not be able to cope, and that's not with the state of our hospital, as you know, that's not something that we really want to even consider.
So would you support keeping people out of Northland if you are not at 90% double dosed by the 29th of November?
There'll be a lot of people who would be really, really upset about that because their livelihoods rely on people visiting. So that's, again, that message that for us to be able to welcome people from outside of our region, actually, at the moment, people from the rest of New Zealand can get to Northland. It's just the Aucklanders, that sort of permeability of that border is really important to us. We've all got friends and family who we want to visit in Auckland. They want to come up here, and we want to make that happen.
But what is your position as Mayor, Sheryl? Can you be clear with your position? If your district is not at 90% double dosed by the time that 29 November decision day comes around, do you support free flow of people over the border into Taitokoro?
What I would support is for the evidence-based decision-making to be doing the right thing for our people, and that includes health, but it also includes our economy. So it's fortunately for me, it's not actually my decision. It will be the government's decision, and we do encourage them to make the right call because it is so critical to us. But we know that our health infrastructure could be compromised, and then our economy is compromised. So coming back, the most important thing is that we get to that 90% double vaxxed. And if that message isn't loud and clear, then by now it really should be. And that's our passport to the options.
And that is the Whangārei Mayor Sheryl Mai there. It's 6:20. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. A lot of you getting in touch about the vaccine mandate. This person says, I was kicked off an industrial printing site for being unvaccinated. The company introduced a policy the day before which says they won't allow unvaccinated on site once the traffic light system is introduced. Isn't kicking me off site prior to the traffic light system discrimination? This has cost my business tens of thousands of dollars. Interesting question. Businesses have to do a health and safety, or can do a health and safety assessment and make a policy based around that. Don't know the particular details of your case. Judith has got in touch to say thank goodness that unvaccinated people have been removed from mandated services. We'll feel far safer visiting such premises. And this one, many dental patients will be pleased to know dental staff who will not be vaccinated will no longer be working in dental practices. As well as concerned about catching COVID-19, many of us would not trust staff who do not trust in vaccines to provide a good dental service. On teachers, this one, I am not attending school unless 100% of children are fully jabbed. The students can be just as infectious. Teachers and administrators need equal protection, or we should forget mandates. Another person says, I would not want my child being taught by an unvaccinated teacher for two reasons. One, the obvious health reason. Two, if the teacher is not smart enough to understand the science, then they should have never been a teacher. That one from John. Thanks for all your feedback. Text us on 2101. It is 6:21, and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The owner of the helicopter company at the centre of a flight that killed 6 tourists and a pilot in 2015 today pushed back against claims the company wasn't up to scratch at the time of the crash. The coroner's inquest began in Christchurch today with the aim of gleaning any safety improvements to prevent something like this happening again. Our reporter Kim Moody was in the Christchurch District Court.
It was a scenic flight over a stunning snow-capped glacier that ended in tragedy. Queenstown pilot Mitchell Gamron and 6 tourists were killed when the AS-350 Squirrel helicopter crashed into a crevice. 6 years, several investigations and a few criminal charges later, the coroner's inquest was reopened this morning. Coroner Marcus Elliott offered his sincere condolences to the families of the dead, tuned into the proceedings via audio-visual link from overseas, and said the victims would remain at the heart of the inquest. Then James Scott, who owned and directed Alpine Adventures at the time of the crash, was called on to give evidence. A 2019 Transport Accident Investigation Commission report highlighted a slew of failings, saying Gamron was inexperienced and hadn't been properly trained. But Scott said that wasn't the case.
And with Mitch, that first season, he did, I think, 180 flights to the Franz Josef Glacier under supervision of our senior pilots. And I think at the time he had 360 or more hours in the squirrel with us operating, so he wasn't new. And like I said, he'd just been overseas and done a winter with flying a rescue machine and come back to us. So I mean, this wasn't an inexperienced guy. He had 1,800 hours, and a lot of that time was in our glacier region with our conditions.
In 2019, Scott pleaded guilty to 2 charges of failing to take all practical steps to keep his employees safe and was ordered to pay $64,000. He agreed to the summary of facts at the time of his sentencing, but today, in front of family members of the victims, he pushed back on several claims, such as the helicopter being well above its permitted weight. Here's Scott being questioned by barrister Anne Tues for the Crown.
So 47 kilos overweight at the time of the accident, but 65 kilos overweight at the time of takeoff.
Yeah, and I dispute that, and I'd like that evidence looked at some stage over these coming days.
But at the time of your sentencing, this wasn't disputed, was it?
Yeah, well, I said that it wasn't right, but I couldn't identify it at the time because I didn't have all the figures to be able to do it. I didn't have the weights of the people.
On the day of the November crash, rain and cloud forced the cancellation of some earlier flights. The TAIC was critical of the fact that the pilot didn't have enough supervision from a senior pilot that day. They were on another flight. Scott said he agreed the two didn't speak before, but wouldn't accept the pilot wasn't supervised during the flight.
He didn't consult with the lead pilot about whether to take off?
No, not before the flight, but he did talk to, as he was flying, as he was taking off out of the helipad at Fox, he did talk to Toby.
But wasn't that discussion about what it was like at Franz?
Well, I don't know what that discussion was about, just that he did talk to Toby, and Toby said it's no good in the Franz, don't come this way. So maybe Mitch had said to Toby, what's the weather like that way, to try and get an indication whether it was coming or going or what it was doing.
The inquest is set down for the whole week, with family members of the victims expected to give evidence.
To the Netherlands now, it's the latest country to see protests against COVID restrictions, with police using water cannon against demonstrators. As the BBC's Anna Holligan reports, it's because the country is going into a 3-week partial lockdown after a surge in cases.
Under the new Dutch rules, bars, cafes and restaurants can serve until 8 p.m. and diners need to show a COVID entry pass. This 3-week-long lockdown light is designed to limit social interactions in response to a sharp increase in infections. A record number of new cases were recorded in one day this week, and they remain stubbornly high.
Normally everybody was sitting here having dinner and drinks, dinner, and now it's empty. Yeah, crazy. It costs money. People think it's not fair because I know there's COVID, but the 2 hours, what's the difference? 4 hours earlier, and they're gonna have parties in their house now, so you're not gonna solve the problem actually.
A maximum of 4 visitors a day are allowed at home, but this measure is especially difficult to police. Other entrepreneurs have vowed to ignore the early last orders rule. While anti-lockdown, anti-vax protesters and conspiracy propagators who hurled fireworks at riot police dominated the headlines, they represent only a minority. Most people here in the Netherlands reluctantly agree that sacrificing parts of their social lives can contribute to the greater good.
For many countries, the COP26 climate summit didn't deliver enough, but it did deliver some surprise success for a Scottish institution. Iron Brew is a fizzy drink often referred to as Scotland's other national drink after whisky, and it's had a big moment in the sun. The BBC's Paddy Maguire reports.
It's bright orange, it's fizzy,
and it's sweet. And in its latest advert, set in a saloon in America's Wild West, a bar fight kicks off as two cowboys disagree about its taste.
Tastes like bubblegum. Hey! It tastes like tutti frutti. Tutti frutti.
Maybe it's bubblegum. Maybe it's tutti frutti. But there's no doubt that the taste of Iron Brew hit the spot when the American politician, simply known as AOC, that's Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, sampled the drink in Glasgow at the COP26 summit this week.
Let's see how it is. Ready? They're watching me over there. Okay, so it's orange. Okay, here we go.
Not bubblegum. Not tutti frutti.
This tastes just like a Puerto Rican soda. This is cola champagne.
There's no doubt she approved. It's the kind of PR that companies dream of. A well-known politician giving a brand the thumbs up in a spontaneous moment of fun at a conference that was understandably short on light relief. Official sponsors had paid millions to promote their green credentials by being featured at the event. Iron Brew had cleverly maximised its status as an emblem of Scotland to make sure it was the only fizzy drink available at the convention centres used during COP26. Ms Ocasio-Cortez was attending an event on gender and climate crisis, and it was Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon who had urged her to try Iron Brew.
And some last feedback before we head off. This on the vaccine mandate. Fiona says, I'm a teacher and all the teachers I know are fully vaccinated. Might be some short-term pain, but long-term schools are going to be better off without anti-vaxxers who have demonstrated that they are not able to tell the difference between disinformation and reliable scientific information. They are foolish at best, stupid and selfish at worst, and we are better off without them teaching God knows what to our children, says Fiona. Another person says, quite frankly, if teachers are unable to distinguish between genuine research and misinformation, they shouldn't be teaching. That's all we've got time for tonight. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō from 5 a.m. tomorrow. First up speaks to a Board of Trustees chairman from a Tasman school who explains why the government's vaccine mandate has forced him to quit. That'll be an interesting one to tune in to. 5 a.m. Kei te hoki mai anō pōpō whānau po Mārie. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. Same place, same time. Have a great evening.